Alright, we're supposed to solve this algebraically. Remember, with an absolute value, it's a V graph, and we could actually have two answers. So we're going to check it first for this one, check it second for the opposite. Now, you don't have to memorize this. If you remember, there are numbers that are going to make this inside part equal negative, and when that's the case, we take the negative. And when I divide by -1, this is what I get. So 4x equals 2, x equals 1/2, 4x equals -4, x equals -1. Those are our two answers. Now we could check it on our calculator. We have to turn our plot off. We have to clear this, and we could actually put in math num abs 4x plus 1, and I'm going to have it intersect at 3. Now don't forget, zoom 6 puts it in the standard form, and I can see what those intersection points are. Second calc intersect, and I need to make sure that I get 0.5. Second calc intersect, and if I don't go closer to the other point, it won't know which one to give me, and I get -1, so it checks out all right. All right, this one tells us to do it also algebraically, so I am going to set it up equal to 0. Now it's a quadratic. I do not know if it will factor. We can try. If I do 3x and 2x, and I do 3 and 1, I get 9. And then I get 2, so that'll work. So now I've got 3, I'm going to make this a plus and this a minus. 3x minus 1 and 2x plus 3 equals 0. See, I get 6x squared. I get 9x minus 2x, which is 7x, and I get -3. And I would actually have to solve this. And I get 1/3. And I get -3/2. You could also do the quadratic formula, and you can also check on your calculator and calculate the zeros. Now I could solve this algebraically. 2 goes into all of it, so I'm going to factor out the 2. I don't know if this is going to factor. I get -2x and a -x. That doesn't give me a -2. So I don't think this can be factored. We might have to do the quadratic formula with this one. If that's the case, I'm going to go back to the original. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. 4 plus or minus 16, let's see, this should be -32 all over 8. And if we're looking at the real numbers, this is going to not be a real number. But I can look at it as a complex, and it's going to be 4 plus or minus 4i over 8, which is 1/2 plus or minus 1/2 I. So this is probably not going to have any real zeros. If we checked it on the calculator, it should never touch the x-axis. So let's see if that's the case. If it never touches the x-axis, we are going to have non-real answers. And it never touches, so it's going to have to be an imaginary or a complex number, which is what we found. Alright, in 51 we're supposed to solve by completing the square. We cannot complete the square as long as there's a 2 in front. So we divide everything by 2. What we end up with now is x squared minus 3/2 x equals 1/2. We always take the -3/2, the b, we halve it, and then we square it. So what we have here is -3/4, and then we square it, so we get 9/16. That is now my new C value. So what I'm going to do is put 9/16 over here. So we took the B, we took half of it, and then we square it. So what I have here is I got to multiply this by 8/8. So 8 times 1 plus 9 is 17/16. And this is now a perfect square, which is always going to be this term. Some of you go, what happened to the -3/2? Well, if I take this and I FOIL it, I'm going to get x squared minus 3/4 x minus 3/4 x plus 9/16. And I get, this is my middle term, which, by the way, reduces to 3/2. Okay, so if you recognize the pattern, you don't have to spend the time factoring this, because with fractions it makes it a little more difficult. So now I have it where I can take square roots. I get x minus 3/4. This is plus or minus the square root of 17. And what is the square root of 16? It's 4. And I can solve for this equation. There is completing the square. I have solved for x by completing the square. Now you can check with the quadratic formula and see if you get that as well. In problem 52, we're just going to use the quadratic formula. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. -4 plus or minus 16 plus 12 all over 6. X equals -4 plus or minus the square root of 28 over 6, which is -4 plus or minus 2 square root of 7. Remember, this is 4 times 8 over 6, which will reduce to -3 plus or minus the square root of 7 over 3, or -2, I mean. Okay? Any questions on this? You should have the quadratic formula down pat. That's how we reduced it. We factored it out. Okay?